for this install.
Go ride.
What's going on, guys? So today we're going to install the lowering springs on the Fusion. We're here in the garage. I'm with Trey. He's getting the car set up on the lift, and we're gonna get these springs installed. What I went with was these Steeda springs. Got these brand new off of eBay, and they were $120 or $30 shipped to me. Of course, I always go to eBay just because I like saving money, especially when I can get things brand new. The kit includes this one-page kind of color instructions from Steeda. So hopefully these can be some help when we get this knocked out. So after you take your wheel off, this is what we're gonna be looking at. Your front strut assembly with the spring. It's gonna put the lug nuts back on the studs just so we don't lose them. It's a pro tip. Just to help us out, we're gonna go ahead and spray down these bolts with PP Blaster. Depending on the year of your car, how old it is, or your driving conditions, you may or may not need this, but just as an aid, we can go ahead and soak everything down so we can get started. So the first thing we're gonna remove is this bolt that connects the front sway bar.
There we go. Let's get that out the way. Put the bolt back on so you know where everything goes. Very, very, very important.
So the next thing we're gonna do is remove this clip here that connects the ABS line to the front strut. For that, we're just gonna use a flathead screwdriver to kind of just get behind it and pop it off. All right, so on the other side, we're gonna remove this line that's attaching the brake line to the strut. All right, so next up, we're gonna remove these two bolts here on the bottom of the strut. Just remove these two bolts, and then we'll just have to get the three that are up top. We remove the nut off the backside, and then just gonna take a mallet or a hammer with some light pressure and just knock the bolt through, and it'll come loose. Just stick a, so right now the strut is loose, and the only thing holding it to the car are those three small bolts that are on the top. We're gonna lower the car down and then start working on that. Also, we use these stands here just to support the brake assembly so that it wouldn't be putting that pressure on the brake line that you just freed up. So holding the cowl on, because you have these two bolts here and there's one more that's under here. There's one more that's under here. You remove these little clips, and you'll be able to raise it up. And then you have 4 of these that are all along the cowl. You just use a flathead screwdriver, get behind them, and they'll pop right up. See, with them off, you can just raise it up and get to that bolt that's hiding underneath there. Yeah, it's the smallest, most useless magnetic tray I've ever seen in my life.
Useless. Just getting work done. Just, we're not going to lift this all the way up, and we're using the ratchet and wrench to take the back one off. We're going to leave the front two on to keep the pressure off.
Also, keep in mind when you take these two bolts out, and when you take all three of these bolts out, the strut will drop free. So have somebody there to support the strut so it doesn't hit anything or tear any of your brake lines, because then you'd be having a bad day.
Yeah, I can get jiggy with that.
So before you take this off, this top nut, you have this little rubber cap. You can just pull this off with your fingers. It comes right off, but you're not going to take this nut off yet. You're actually going to compress this spring until it's free and all the pressure's off of here, off of this top hat, and then we're going to take the nut off. Look, the top is still on it, so you don't have to. So we've secured it in this little vise thing. We've secured the spring. Go ahead and start taking these spring compressors off. And I'm being overly cautious with this just because I don't really trust these things fully. All right, so you can see it's actually quite a bit of difference between your stock spring and the Steeda spring. So obviously when you go to install these, you won't have to compress this one as much because it's already quite a bit shorter. All right, so what we have here is a 6mm Allen key. We're gonna insert into the top of the strut along with the screwdriver, this flathead screwdriver, to just help keep the nut in place as we loosen it.
Yeah, it's like you tighten it and then the screw will back out.
So with the nut removed and the springs are still compressed, you just pull this top head off. This dust boot is actually connected. Just probably pull that down. So then you just take this and set this aside. So you can see how much this spring has been compressed. So it is under a lot of load, so just be careful. We've got the spring off the strut. I'm just gonna reverse the process. And again, just taking my time to get these compressors off of this spring. So the next step, we're gonna compress this new spring so we can put the top hat back on. And it's the same process of removing the stock springs. You wanna make sure these are seated flat. And again, the spring compressor should be directly across from one another. Now you don't have to compress these new springs as much because they are already shorter. So you get them down enough just so you can see the threads. Get the nut down as far as you can by hand. And this is an 18mm. So at this point, we're gonna release these spring compressors so that the spring will actually put pressure on this top hat, which will allow us to tighten this nut all the way down. So that's your new assembly. To install, we're just gonna reverse what we did to uninstall. And top bolts first, followed by the rest. So one thing to note, this flat part here should rest up against the inside of the strut tower. So the last thing is not to forget is these little clips that hold the cowl down. They should just, and they'll just pop back on. With all those on, we're ready to raise the car back up. In case you're wondering what the underside of a Fusion looks like, they actually did a good job with the aerodynamics on this car. There is very little of the undercarriage showing. It's all covered to allow the car to be more aerodynamic, which leads to it being more fuel efficient. So we got the car raised back up. We're just gonna reinstall everything you took apart that you took. Hopefully you kept all your bolts in a safe area and you just reverse the disassembly process.
I'm trying to get out of the way.
There's something else we wanted to point out. When you take these bolts off and you put them back on, do it from the side with the nut on it, because this side is threaded to keep it in place. So do it from the other side that backs out with the nut on it. Since we got the car on the left, okay, we're gonna need these to support the rear jack stand, to support the rear subframe, because we're actually gonna be dropping it. So I've got it supported here and then down there. In order to install these springs on this car, you have to remove the rear subframe. So once you support it, we're gonna disconnect the sway bar. This sway bar in two places, or either from one of these two bolts here, and then we're gonna disconnect it from the subframe, which is under here. So we're gonna take the 18mm wrench, put it on the bolt, and then use the same 6mm that we use for the front. So this is where you're gonna get your paint pen and you're gonna mark your two main subframe bolts. There's one here, and then back here. In order to get to this second subframe bolt, we have to remove this plastic shield here. To do that, there's two 10mm bolts. There's one here, and then there's one up here, which you'll need an extension to get to. And initially, you may look at this because there's a hole here, but this hole does not line up with that bolt. So that's why this has to come off.
Wide forward, wide forward, wide.
All right, so now we've got the main subframe bolts off. We're gonna get these two torque spits that are under here. We're gonna move these two torque spits. These are T47 torque spits. These 3 bolts, I actually already started taking this off. So there's one here. There's one here. And then there's one right here on the corner. So next, there are 2 bolts that are 15 millimeter on the bottom of the strut. This is what we're gonna take out next. We went ahead and lowered the subframe. As you see, the spring is free. You just kind of have to rock it, kind of pull down on it so it'll clear.
Oh man.
And she's out. As per Steeda's instructions, this is the bottom with this black rubber on it. So we're gonna mount our hat on the top of it, making sure that it fits into this little groove that's been cut out, and just slide it back in there.
Hey. Alright.
That's it, don't too bad.
Reverse order now.
So now your spring is in. Just make sure on the bottom of the spring, just like on the top, there's one of these cutouts. So make sure that spring is sitting in there in the bottom. So at that point, you're pretty much done. So just test drive your car, turn your radio off, listen for any rattles or anything that sounds unfamiliar. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel for more, and let me know what you guys want to see. Thank you.